The warning siren started at exactly 0600 hours. Admiral Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when every screen in his office turned red. He set down his cup carefully, though his hands wanted to shake, and pressed the emergency channel button. "Talk to me," he said into the communicator. "Sir, you need to see this." The voice belonged to Commander Lisa Bryant, his second-in-command. She sounded calm, but Jake had known her for 15 years. He could hear the fear underneath. Jake reached the bridge of the USS Valiant in less than 3 minutes. What he saw through the main viewport made his blood run cold. The space above Earth's moon was filled with ships. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands of them. They hung in the darkness like a swarm of metal insects, their hulls reflecting the distant sun. "How many?" Jake asked quietly. Lisa checked her display. "Computer counts 9,800 ships, sir. All of them are at least twice the size of our biggest carriers." Jake felt his stomach drop. Earth's entire defense fleet had 340 ships. He had known this day might come, but he had hoped it would be later. Much later. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 8 years ago. They were children playing with toys compared to the civilizations that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. "Get me President Wallace," Jake said, "and send the recall signal. I want every ship we have in defensive positions around Earth within the hour." Captain Ryan Palmer was on patrol near the lunar mining colonies when the recall came through. He had been in the military for 20 years, had fought in 3 border conflicts with hostile alien races, and had never seen anything like the fleet that now filled his viewport. His crew stood at their stations on the USS Endeavour, waiting for his orders. "All hands to battle stations," Ryan said. "Bring weapons online and charge the shields. Link up with the defense grid and await further orders from Admiral Morrison." His weapons officer, a young lieutenant named Danny Harris, looked up from his console. "Sir, I'm counting over 9,000 enemy contacts. We're outnumbered almost 30 to 1. "I can count, Lieutenant," Ryan said. He kept his voice steady. His crew needed to see confidence, even if he felt none. "We've got a job to do. Let's do it." On Mars Research Station, Dr. Kate Sullivan was already in her lab when the alert came through. She had been expecting this call for 3 years, ever since her team had found the ruins on Titan. The government had classified everything above top secret. They had given her unlimited funding and told her to work fast. Now she knew why. "Ben, get in here," she called to her assistant. Dr. Ben Carter rushed into the lab. He was carrying 2 cups of coffee, and nearly dropped both of them when he saw Kate's face. "What's wrong?" "They're here," Kate said. She pulled up the defense network feed on her main screen. The Xanthari fleet filled the display. "We need to get Project Artemis online now." Ben set down the coffee cups. His hands were shaking. "Kate, we haven't finished the safety protocols. If something goes wrong, the feedback could destroy the entire station. If we don't use it, there won't be a station left to destroy," Kate said. She started typing commands into her computer. "Start the power-up sequence. We need to be ready when Admiral Morrison gives the word." Back on the Valiant, Jake was in his command chair watching the tactical display. The Xanthari fleet had moved into an attack formation. It was beautiful and terrifying. They moved with perfect precision, like they had done this 1,000 times before. They probably had. Lisa came to stand beside him. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. It's being broadcast on every frequency we have." "Put it on screen," Jake said. The face that appeared was not human. It had 4 eyes, blue-gray skin, and a mouthful of sharp teeth. When it spoke, the computer translated its words into English. "People of Earth, I am Fleet Commander Thel Cross of the Xanthari Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our domain. You have 1 hour to surrender your military forces and submit to our authority. If you comply, your people will be allowed to live as subjects of the Empire. If you resist, your planet will be reduced to ash. You have 1 hour. Choose wisely." The transmission ended. The bridge was silent. Jake looked around at his crew. They were young, most of them. They had joined the fleet to explore the stars, to see wonders beyond Earth, to be part of humanity's great adventure. They had not signed up to die in a hopeless battle against an enemy that outnumbered them 30 to 1. But they were here anyway. And so was he. "Open a channel to all ships," Jake said. "Let me talk to everyone." Lisa nodded and activated the fleet-wide communication system. Every ship, every station, every person in Earth's defense forces would hear what he said next. "This is Admiral Morrison. You've all seen what we're facing. The Zinthari have given us an hour to surrender. I'm not going to lie to you. The odds are bad. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. But I'm not going to surrender. Not today, not ever. Earth is our home. Humanity deserves to exist. If they want to take that from us, they're going to have to go through us first. I know some of you have families down there. I know some of you are scared. I'm scared too. But we're all that stands between them and 7 billion people who are counting on us. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to fight. We're going to make them pay for every inch of space they take. And maybe, just maybe, we're going to show these bastards that humanity doesn't go down easy. He paused. The channel was still open. He could hear nothing but silence from the other ships. Then Captain Ryan Palmer's voice came through. USS Endeavour standing by, Admiral. We're ready when you are. One by one, the other captains reported in. Every ship, every station, every single person in Earth's defense forces said they were ready to fight. Jake looked at Lisa. She nodded once, her jaw set with determination. All ships, battle formation Delta, Jake ordered. Activate all weapons systems. Charge all shields to maximum. And somebody get me Dr. Sullivan on Mars. If she's got any tricks up her sleeve, now would be a really good time. The Zinthari fleet began to move forward. The hour was almost up. The battle for Earth was about to begin. The first shot came from the Zinthari fleet at exactly 0701 hours. A beam of purple energy crossed the distance between the alien armada and Earth's defensive line in less than a second. It hit the destroyer USS Falcon directly in the center. The ship's shields flared bright white for a moment, then collapsed. The beam punched through the hull like it was made of paper. The Falcon exploded in a ball of fire and debris. All ships, engage, Jake ordered. His voice was steady, but his knuckles were white as he gripped the arms of his command chair. The human fleet surged forward. 340 ships against 9,800. Every captain knew the math. Every crew member understood they were probably going to die. But they attacked anyway. Captain Ryan Palmer led the first attack wing. 12 ships followed him in a tight formation, moving at maximum speed toward the Zinthari vanguard. Target their lead ships, he ordered. Fire everything we've got. The USS Endeavour launched a full spread of nuclear missiles. Behind them, railgun slugs flew through space at a fraction of the speed of light. Experimental plasma weapons, barely tested, added their fire to the attack. The missiles reached the Zinthari ships first. Bright flashes lit up the darkness as nuclear warheads detonated against alien shields. 2 Zinthari ships took heavy damage. One of them exploded, its reactor overloading from the assault. Ryan felt a moment of hope. They could hurt these things. Then the Zinthari returned fire. The space around Ryan's ship filled with purple energy beams. They came from every direction, thousands of them like rain made of death. The cruiser Independence, flying on Ryan's left, took 3 direct hits. Its shields collapsed and the beams cut the ship in half. Both pieces tumbled away, leaking atmosphere and bodies into the void. Evasive maneuvers, Ryan shouted. His pilot threw the Endeavour into a desperate roll. Beams passed above and below them, so close that Ryan could feel the heat through the hull. His ship shuddered as one beam grazed their shields. The power levels dropped by 30%. On the Valiant, Commander Lisa Bryant was coordinating the defense of Earth's orbital platforms. These were old military satellites built during the early days of space colonization, upgraded with modern weapons. They added their firepower to the fight, launching missiles and firing heavy cannons at the approaching Zinthari fleet. Platform 7 is taking heavy fire, one of her operators reported. Shields at 15%. Reinforce with drones from Platform 8, Lisa ordered. She watched her tactical display with growing horror. Ships were dying every few seconds. Each red icon that disappeared represented hundreds of lives. Friends, colleagues, people she had trained with, served with, shared meals with. The destroyer USS Falcon was gone. The cruiser Independence was gone. The frigate Morning Star was gone. The carrier Washington was burning, its hull torn open by enemy fire. She watched as the crew evacuated in escape pods. Most of the pods made it away. Some didn't. Ma'am, the Zinthari are targeting our orbital facilities, another operator said. They're going after the industrial platforms. Lisa's jaw tightened. Those platforms built ships, refined fuel, produced weapons. If they were destroyed, Earth would lose most of its manufacturing capability. Redirect Attack Wing 3 to protect the industrial sector. Tell them to hold at any cost. Lieutenant Chris Hayes flew his fighter through the chaos of battle. He was part of the Valiant's fighter wing, 20 small craft designed for close support. His fighter was fast and heavily armed, but it felt like a toy compared to the massive warships filling the sky. "Blue Squadron, form up on me," he called to his wingmates. "We're going after that carrier on the left flank." His squadron dove toward a Zenthari carrier that was launching fighters of its own. The alien fighters were sleek and dangerous looking. Chris didn't want to find out how they performed in combat. His squadron fired first, missiles streaking toward the carrier's launch bays. The missiles hit and secondary explosions rippled across the carrier's hull. But the Zenthari fighters were already launching. They moved incredibly fast, faster than anything Chris had ever seen. His squadron scattered, trying to evade. "Blue 7 is hit," someone screamed over the radio. Chris glanced back to see one of his wingmates spinning out of control, their fighter trailing smoke and fire. "Blue Squadron, break and attack," Chris ordered. "Don't let them get organized." The dogfight that followed was brutal and fast. Chris pushed his fighter to its limits, twisting and turning through space, firing whenever he had a shot. He managed to destroy 2 alien fighters, but his squadron was taking losses. Blue 9 went down, then Blue 3, then Blue 11. On Mars, Dr. Kate Sullivan watched the battle through the Defense Network feed while her hands flew across her keyboard. The power readings for Project Artemis were climbing steadily. The massive facility was drawing energy from Mars itself, pulling power from the planet's electromagnetic field. "Kate, we're at 60% power," Ben said. His voice was tight with stress. "But the containment field is fluctuating. If it fails before we reach full power, the backlash will vaporize the entire station." "How long until we reach full power?" Kate asked. 23 minutes. Kate looked at the battle feed. Earth's fleet was dying. They had already lost nearly 50 ships. The Zenthari were barely scratched. 23 minutes might as well be forever. "Can we fire at partial power?" she asked. Ben shook his head. "The quantum pulse needs full power to propagate across the entire system. Anything less and it won't reach all the Zenthari ships. Some of them would survive." Kate made her decision. "Then we wait. Keep the power building. Admiral Morrison needs to keep them busy for 23 more minutes." Back in space, Jake Morrison was doing exactly that. The Valiant was in the thick of the fighting, its massive guns firing constantly. He had moved the ship close to Earth's gravity well, using the planet's mass to help his ship maneuver. The Zenthari were powerful, but they weren't used to fighting in such close proximity to a planet. It gave him a small advantage. "Target that battleship," he ordered. All forward batteries, concentrated fire. The Valiant's main guns spoke. Heavy shells, each one the size of a bus, crossed the distance to the Zenthari battleship in seconds. They hit the alien ship's shields and detonated. The shields held, but Jake could see them weakening. He ordered another volley. Then another. The Zenthari battleship's shields collapsed. The next volley of shells punched through its hull. Explosions rippled across the massive ship as internal systems failed. The battleship began to list, its engines failing. "Good kill," Lisa said from her station. "But sir, we've got a problem. The Zenthari are deploying their second wave. Another 3,000 ships are moving toward Earth." Jake felt cold. They had been fighting for less than 30 minutes and they were already losing badly. The second wave would break them completely. His communicator chimed. It was Dr. Kate Sullivan from Mars. "Admiral, I need 20 more minutes," she said. "Can you give me 20 minutes? Jake looked at his tactical display. Ships were dying. His people were dying. But he didn't have a choice. "You'll get your 20 minutes, Doctor," he said. "We'll all get them or we'll die trying." 3 years ago, Kate Sullivan had been part of an exploration team sent to Titan, Saturn's largest moon. They were supposed to be studying ice formations. Instead, they found ruins buried deep beneath the frozen surface. The discovery had changed everything. The ruins were old. Not hundreds of years old, not thousands, millions of years old. They belonged to a civilization that had existed long before humans had even evolved. The walls were covered in symbols that took Kate's team 2 years to translate. When they finally decoded the message, they understood why the ruins had been left there. It was a warning. And a gift. The civilization that built the ruins had fought a war against an enemy they called the Devourers. The description matched the Zenthari perfectly. 4 eyes, blue-gray skin, a vast empire built on conquest and destruction. The ancient civilization had lost that war. Their worlds had burned. Their people had died. But before the end, they had created a weapon. The weapon didn't destroy ships or kill with explosions. It was more subtle than that. It targeted the neural pattern specific to the Xanthari species, a quantum pulse that would shut down their brains, making them unconscious. The ancient builders had hidden the weapon's plans in the ruins, hoping that someday, someone would find it and use it to stop the Xanthari. Kate and her team had spent 3 years building that weapon. They called it Project Artemis. Now, watching the battle through her screens on Mars, Kate saw Earth's fleet dying. The Valiant was still fighting, but it was taking heavy damage. Captain Ryan Palmer's ship, the Endeavour, was barely holding together. More than 100 human ships had been destroyed. The Xanthari Armada was closing in on Earth itself. "We're at 95% power," Ben said. His voice was hoarse from shouting over the alarms. The facility was shaking. The walls groaned under the stress of the massive energy buildup. "Kate, we need to fire now or shut down. The containment field won't hold much longer." Kate's finger hovered over the activation button. 95% might not be enough. The pulse might not reach the entire Xanthari fleet. But if she waited for 100% and the containment field failed, Earth would lose its only chance. She pressed the button. "Firing now," she said. The facility's power core released all its stored energy in a single instant. The pulse was invisible, moving faster than light through quantum space. It expanded outward from Mars in all directions, passing through ships and planets and people without harming them. The pulse was tuned to one specific genetic signature, one specific brain pattern. The Xanthari Fleet Commander Thelkros was on the bridge of his flagship when the pulse hit. One moment he was watching his fleet close in for the final attack on Earth. The next moment the world went dark. He felt his consciousness slipping away, unable to fight it. Around him, his entire crew collapsed. Every Xanthari on every ship in the fleet fell unconscious at exactly the same moment. 9,800 warships suddenly had no one at the controls. On the Valiant, Jake Morrison saw every enemy ship stop moving at once. For a moment he thought it was a trick. Then his sensor officer spoke up. "Sir, I'm reading massive drops in power output from all Xanthari vessels. Their shields are failing. Their weapons are powering down." "What the hell?" Lisa said, staring at her display in disbelief. Jake's communicator chimed. It was Kate Sullivan, and she was laughing. Not a happy laugh. A desperate, relieved, almost hysterical laugh. "It worked," she said. "Admiral, it actually worked. Every Xanthari in the system is unconscious, but you need to move fast. My calculations say they'll start waking up in about 40 minutes. Their brains are already adapting to the frequency." Jake didn't waste time with questions. "All ships cease defensive operations. Begin attack pattern Omega. Target every enemy ship. Weapons free. I want their engines destroyed and their weapon systems offline before they wake up." The order spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Ships that had been desperately defending themselves moments ago suddenly became hunters. They moved through the disabled Xanthari Armada, targeting one ship after another. Captain Ryan Palmer led his wing through the thickest concentration of enemy ships. The Endeavour was badly damaged, her shields barely functional, but her weapons still worked. They fired on ship after ship, destroying engines and weapon systems. "This feels wrong," Ryan said to his first officer. "They're helpless." "We're shooting fish in a barrel." His first officer, a woman named Susan Price, shook her head. "They came here to kill us all, Captain. Every man, woman, and child on Earth. They would have done it without hesitation. This isn't murder. This is survival." Ryan knew she was right, but it still felt wrong. He kept firing anyway. Lieutenant Chris Hayes flew his fighter through the maze of dead ships. His squadron, down to just 8 fighters from the original 20, worked methodically. They planted explosive charges on the largest Xanthari battleships, rigging them to blow. Other fighter squadrons did the same. When the Xanthari woke up, they would find most of their fleet destroyed or crippled. On Mars, Ben was checking the readings from Project Artemis. "Kate, the weapon is completely burned out. The power core is slag. We got one shot and we took it. There's no way to fire it again." "Then we better make this count," Kate said. She was watching the battle feed, seeing human ships systematically destroy the Xanthari fleet. It was brutal, efficient, necessary. Jake Morrison coordinated the attack from the Valiant. Lisa stood beside him, calling out targets and directing wings to the highest priority vessels. They worked together like they had for 15 years, anticipating each other's thoughts. Admiral, we've destroyed or disabled 6,200 enemy ships, Lisa reported. But sensors are showing power fluctuations on some of the distant vessels. They're starting to wake up. How long? Jake asked. Maybe 10 minutes. Jake looked at his tactical display. There were still over 3,000 Xanthari ships that hadn't been neutralized. If they all woke up at once, the battle would start again. And this time humanity didn't have any secret weapons left. Focus all available ships on the vessels showing power fluctuations, Jake ordered. Those are the priority targets. We need to keep them from organizing. Captain Ryan Palmer received the order and redirected his wing toward Jupiter. Several hundred Xanthari ships were clustered there, and they were waking up faster than the others. Maybe Jupiter's radiation was interfering with the quantum pulse. Maybe they were just lucky. Either way, they were becoming dangerous again. The running battle that followed was desperate and chaotic. The Xanthari, confused and terrified by what had happened, fought back with everything they had. They didn't understand what had knocked them unconscious. They only knew that their fleet had been destroyed while they slept. They were scared, and scared enemies were unpredictable. Ryan's ship took a direct hit from a Xanthari beam weapon. The shields collapsed and the beam burned through the hull. Alarm screamed. His crew worked frantically to contain the damage. Engineering reports main power is offline, his first officer said. We're running on backup generators. Weapons at 30% capacity. Keep shooting, Ryan ordered. We stop when we're dead. Back on Earth, General Amy Rhodes was coordinating the planet-side defenses. She had every missile installation on the planet linked into the targeting network. When the Xanthari ships near Jupiter started fighting back, she gave the order to fire. Thousands of missiles launched from Earth, streaking toward the enemy fleet. The battle raged for another 20 minutes. Human ships and Xanthari ships traded fire at close range. More ships died on both sides. But slowly, inevitably, the human forces gained the upper hand. They had surprise. They had momentum. And they had the desperate fury of people fighting for their survival. When the last Xanthari ship near Jupiter exploded, Jake Morrison allowed himself to breathe. They had done it. Against impossible odds, they had won. Fleet Commander Thelcross woke to the sound of alarms. His head pounded. His vision was blurry. For a moment, he couldn't remember where he was or what had happened. Then the memories came flooding back. The attack on Earth, the human fleet, and then nothing. He pulled himself to his feet and looked at his bridge. Half his crew was still unconscious. The others were stumbling around, confused and disoriented. Emergency lights cast everything in red. Smoke filled the air. Through the viewport, he could see wreckage floating in space. Xanthari wreckage, status report, he croaked. His tactical officer managed to pull up a display. What Thelcross saw made his blood run cold. Of the 9,800 ships he had brought to Earth, less than 3,000 were still operational. The rest were destroyed or so badly damaged they couldn't fight. How had this happened? How had these primitive humans done this? Commander, we're receiving a fleet-wide transmission from the surviving ships, his communications officer said. They're requesting orders. They want to know what happened. Thelcross didn't have an answer. He accessed the ship's logs, trying to understand what had occurred. The logs showed the initial battle. They showed his fleet moving in for the final attack. Then there was a gap. 27 minutes of missing data. When the logs resumed, they showed human ships swarming through his fleet, destroying everything in sight. Get me a count of all operational vessels, he ordered, and plot a course to the nearest quantum jump point. We're leaving. His tactical officer worked quickly. Sir, I count 2,800 ships that can still jump to quantum space. The rest are too damaged. Leave them, Thelcross said. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. He was abandoning thousands of his people, but he didn't have a choice. If they stayed, the humans would destroy what was left of his fleet. He opened a channel to all surviving ships. All vessels, this is Fleet Commander Thelcross. We are retreating to the rally point at Proxima Centauri. Follow my navigation coordinates. We jump in 10 minutes. But the humans had other plans. On the Valiant, Jake Morrison watched the Xanthari ships begin to regroup. They were forming up in defensive formations, preparing to run. He had known this moment was coming. He had been thinking about it since the battle turned in humanity's favor. Lisa came to stand beside him. Sir, the Xanthari are preparing to jump. What are your orders? Jake was quiet for a long moment. His crew watched him, waiting. This decision would define not just the battle, but possibly the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. No survivors, he said finally. No witnesses. No one goes home to tell the Xanthari Empire what happened here. Lisa's eyes widened. Sir, are you sure? That's nearly 3,000 ships. Tens of thousands of people. They came here to exterminate us, Jake said. His voice was hard as steel. Every single person on Earth, 7 billion people. They would have done it without mercy or hesitation. I'm not going to let them run home and bring back reinforcements. We end this here today. He opened a channel to the entire human fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. The enemy is attempting to retreat. We will not allow it. Form blocking positions between the Xanthari fleet and all quantum jump points. No enemy ship leaves this system. No exceptions. Captain Ryan Palmer received the order. His ship was barely holding together. His crew was exhausted. But he understood what Jake was asking for. He redirected his ship to block the route to the nearest jump point. All hands, battle stations one more time, he said. We're not done yet. The Xanthari realized what was happening. Thelcross saw human ships moving to cut off his escape routes. They were positioning themselves between his fleet and freedom. Rage and fear warred in his chest. All ships, this is the fleet commander, he broadcast. We are being denied retreat. We surrender. Cease all hostile actions. We surrender. On the Valiant, Jake heard the transmission. He didn't respond. He just watched as his ships took their positions. Thelcross broadcast again. Human commander, we surrender. The war is over. We are withdrawing. Please respond. Jake finally opened a channel. His voice was cold enough to freeze stars. No, you came here to kill us all. You don't get to surrender. You don't get to go home. This ends here. In the Xanthari flagship, Thelcross felt true terror for the first time in his long military career. These humans weren't going to accept surrender. They were going to kill everyone. All ships break through the blockade, he ordered. Emergency speed. Fight your way through if you have to. The Xanthari fleet surged forward. Nearly 3,000 ships all pushing their engines to maximum, trying desperately to reach the jump points before the humans could stop them. But Earth's fleet, though smaller, was in position. And they were ready. The final battle was brief and savage. The Xanthari ships, already damaged from the earlier fighting, threw themselves at the human defensive line. Purple energy beams and missiles filled the space between the fleets. Ships exploded on both sides. Captain Ryan Palmer's ship, the Endeavour, held the line at Jump Point Alpha. 500 Xanthari ships tried to break through his position. He had 23 human ships under his command. It should have been impossible to hold. But his crews fought like demons. They fired until their weapons overheated. They rammed damaged Xanthari ships when they ran out of ammunition. They held the line. Endeavour to all ships, Ryan broadcast. No one gets through. Not one ship. Lieutenant Chris Hayes was back in his fighter, leading what was left of his squadron. They flew into the thick of the Xanthari formation, targeting engines and weapon systems. His fighter took hit after hit, but he kept flying, kept shooting. 2 of his remaining wingmates were destroyed. Then 3 more, but they bought time for the larger ships to maneuver. On Mars, Dr. Kate Sullivan watched the battle through her feed. Ben stood beside her, his face pale. They had created the weapon that made this possible. They had given humanity the chance to win, but the price of that victory was growing higher by the minute. Are we the good guys? Ben asked quietly. Or did we just become monsters? Kate didn't have an answer. On Earth, General Amy Rhodes had every remaining missile in her arsenal locked onto the Xanthari fleet. When Admiral Morrison gave the order, she launched them all. Thousands of missiles climbed up through Earth's atmosphere, reached space, and streaked toward the enemy. It was overkill. It was excessive. But Morrison had given an order. No survivors. The battle raged for another hour. The Xanthari fought with the desperation of trapped animals. They knew they were going to die. Some tried to surrender. Some tried to run. Some just kept fighting. The result was the same. Thelcross watched his fleet die. Ship after ship disappeared from his tactical display. His own flagship was burning, systems failing one by one. He had lost. Not just the battle. The war, his entire fleet. His career. His life. He opened one final transmission to the human commander. You've won. But this isn't over. The Xanthari Empire spans 1,000 worlds. They will hear about this. They will come back. And they will bring 10 times as many ships. Jake Morrison's response was calm. Let them come. We'll be ready. The flagship exploded 3 seconds later, taking Fleet Commander Thelcros with it. As the smoke cleared and the fires died, Jake Morrison counted the cost. The Xanthari had arrived with 9,800 warships. When the last one fell silent, only 18 ships remained. 18 ships had managed to break through the blockade and jump to quantum space before the humans could stop them. 18 out of 9,800. The battle was over. The Xanthari fleet was destroyed. But the silence that followed was worse than the sound of weapons fire. Jake Morrison sat in his command chair on the Valiant and looked at the wreckage floating in space around Earth. Thousands of ships. Human and alien both. Each one represented hundreds of lives. People who had woken up that morning not knowing it would be their last day. "Final casualty report, sir," Lisa said quietly. She looked exhausted. They all did. The battle had lasted almost 6 hours. It felt like 6 years. Jake took the report but didn't read it immediately. He already knew it would be bad. "Give me the summary." 147 human ships destroyed. 32 more are so badly damaged they'll never fly again. We lost approximately 94,000 personnel. Earth's orbital facilities took heavy damage. 3 of the industrial platforms are total losses. Jake closed his eyes. 94,000 people. Each one of them had a name. A family, dreams, and they were all gone. "And the Xanthari?" he asked. 9,782 ships destroyed. We estimate casualties at over 4 million. 18 ships escaped to quantum space before we could stop them. 18 ships. Jake felt a cold knot in his stomach. Those 18 ships would return to the Xanthari Empire. They would tell their leaders what happened. And then what? Would the Empire leave Earth alone, too frightened to return? Or would they come back with an even larger fleet, determined to wipe humanity from existence? "Get me President Wallace," Jake said, "and start rescue operations. I want every escape pod recovered, every survivor found. Human and Xanthari both." Lisa looked surprised. "Sir, the Xanthari? They're beaten. They're not a threat anymore, and I won't leave people to die in the cold of space, no matter what species they are." Captain Ryan Palmer was already coordinating rescue operations from what was left of the Endeavour. His ship had taken catastrophic damage. Life support was failing. The engines were offline, but his crew was still alive and they were still working. "This is the Endeavour to all ships in the area," Ryan broadcast. "We have multiple escape pods on sensors. All vessels capable of rescue operations, please respond." Ships began reporting in. Despite their damage, despite their exhaustion, the human fleet began the grim work of searching for survivors. They found thousands of escape pods drifting in the debris field. Most were human. Some were Xanthari. Lieutenant Chris Hayes had somehow survived the battle. His fighter was shot to pieces, but it had kept flying. Now he used what was left of his engines to guide rescue teams to pods that his sensors picked up. He found a cluster of them near the ruins of a Xanthari battleship. "This is Blue Leader," he called. "I've got 12 pods here. Most look human, but I'm reading Xanthari life signs in 2 of them." "Recover them all," came the response. "Admiral's orders." On Mars, Dr. Kate Sullivan stood in the ruins of her laboratory. Project Artemis was destroyed. The massive weapon had burned itself out after a single shot. The facility's power core was melted slag. It would take years to rebuild. Maybe decades. Ben came to stand beside her. He had a cut on his forehead from when part of the ceiling had collapsed during the weapon's firing. "Was it worth it?" he asked. Kate thought about that question. They had saved Earth. 7 billion people were alive because of what they had built, but 4 million Xanthari were dead. The weapon they had created from ancient ruins had killed more people in a single instant than any weapon in human history. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Ask me again in 100 years." On Earth, General Amy Rhodes walked through the command center. Her staff was coordinating relief efforts, helping the damaged orbital stations, organizing medical teams for the wounded. The planet had come within hours of total destruction. Everyone knew how close it had been. Her assistant, a young man named Peter Grant, approached with a tablet. "General, we're receiving reports from all over the world. People are celebrating in the streets. They're calling it Liberation Day. They want to throw parades for the fleet when they return." Amy shook her head. "Tell them we're not ready for parades. We've got too many funerals to attend first." Jake Morrison finally read the full casualty report. Names, ranks, ships. He had known most of these people. He had given orders that sent them to their deaths. The weight of it pressed down on him like a physical thing. Lisa came to stand beside his chair. "Sir, you should rest. You've been on the bridge for 18 hours. "I'll rest when everyone is safe," Jake said. He pulled up the tactical display one more time, looking at the 18 red icons that had escaped. "Lisa, what do you think they'll do?" "The Zenthari Empire. When they hear about this..." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "I think they have two choices. They can leave us alone and hope we stay in our corner of space, or they can come back with everything they have and try to finish what they started. Which do you think they'll choose?" "I think they're scared. We destroyed an entire fleet. That's never happened to them before. Fear makes people do unpredictable things." Jake nodded. "Get me Dr. Sullivan on Mars and contact the engineering teams. I want them to start salvaging Zenthari technology immediately. If the Empire comes back, we need to be ready." Over the next few days, the full scope of what had happened became clear. Earth had won the greatest military victory in human history. A fleet of 9,800 ships had been reduced to 18 survivors. But the cost had been terrible. Almost 100,000 people were dead. Earth's military was shattered. It would take years to rebuild. Captain Ryan Palmer stood on the bridge of a rescue ship looking at what was left of the Endeavour. The ship that had been his home for 10 years was a burned-out wreck. It would be easier to build a new ship than to repair the damage. But somehow, seeing it there floating dead in space, he felt proud. The Endeavour had done its job. She had fought until the end and brought her crew home. "Goodbye, old girl," he said quietly. Lieutenant Chris Hayes received a medal for his actions during the battle. He stood at attention while Admiral Morrison pinned it to his uniform. But when the ceremony was over, Chris went back to his quarters and cried. Half his squadron was dead. The medal felt like a poor trade. Dr. Kate Sullivan and Dr. Ben Carter were called to Earth to brief the president and military leadership about Project Artemis. They explained how they had found the ancient weapon, how they had built it, how it had worked. President Wallace listened carefully and then asked the question everyone wanted to know. "Can you build another one?" Kate shook her head. "The weapon was specifically designed for the Zenthari. It won't work on any other species. And it took us 3 years to build using technology we don't fully understand. We could try to recreate it, but there's no guarantee we'd succeed." "Try anyway," the president said. "If they come back, we'll need every advantage we can get." 3 weeks after the battle, Jake Morrison gathered what was left of his fleet for a memorial service. They held it in space near the spot where the fighting had been heaviest. Every ship that could still fly was there. Thousands of crew members stood at attention while Jake read the names of the fallen. It took hours. There were so many names. When he finished, the fleet fired a salute. Bright flashes lit up the darkness as ships fired their weapons into empty space. It was a warrior's farewell. "They will be remembered," Jake said. "Every one of them. They saved us all." In the weeks and months that followed, Earth began to change. The captured Zenthari technology was studied, reverse-engineered, and adapted. Human ships became more powerful. Weapons became more deadly. Defenses became stronger. The planet that had almost been destroyed became a fortress. And everyone waited to see if the 18 ships that escaped would bring back reinforcements. Jake Morrison stood in his office, looking at a picture on his desk. It showed his crew from before the battle. So many of those faces were gone now. He had given the orders that sent them to their deaths. He would have to live with that for the rest of his life. Lisa knocked on his door. "Sir, the new ships are ready for their trials. Command wants you to inspect them." Jake looked at the picture one more time, then set it down. "Let's go. We've got work to do." As he walked through the shipyard, he could see the new fleet taking shape. Bigger ships, better weapons, stronger shields. Earth was preparing for the day when the Zenthari might return. And if they did, they would find humanity ready. The 18 ships that escaped had carried a message back to the Zenthari Empire. A message written in fire and blood. They had learned that Earth was not easy prey. That humanity would fight for its survival with everything it had. That coming to Earth meant death. Whether that message would keep the Zenthari away or bring them back in even greater numbers remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. Earth had changed. Humanity had been tested in fire and had not broken. They had faced extinction and had refused to die. Jake Morrison looked up at the stars through the viewport. Somewhere out there, the Zenthari Empire was deciding what to do about the humans who had destroyed their fleet. Let them come, he thought. We'll be ready. Earth had survived. and it would survive again no matter what came next, because that was what humans did. They survived. They adapted. They fought. And they never ever gave up.